Good afternoon. This is Jeanette. It's morning still. Well, it might be afternoon somewhere. So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are, wherever you're watching. Hello. Good day. That's a good answer, right? Good day. I look pink. I wasn't pink before. Oh, well. There's something about the StreamYard that just changes colors all the time. But you can see the background really nice today, which is wonderful. There, now I look like I've got skin color and not something else. So yay. It's weird how that happens. Okay. Squirrel. So welcome to the Color Whisper Show, where we talk about all things home and healing. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about healing stuff. The world has kind of blown up over the last couple days over Charlie Kirk's death. And however you feel about him, there's people that very much making a lot of fuss over the whole thing. And I want to read you something. I don't go to other people's words very often, but this was so beautiful. And my first degree is in literature, and words are so important. And we bandy these words around like crazy. And the thing is, the media is pushing them around because they do have an effect on us. The media is using words to create a reaction from us. And most people are just repeating these words, and they're not as aware of the effect that they have on us. So, for instance, in self-help, if you've done any self-help stuff, one of the first things they tell you is don't should on yourself, which is kind of funny because it sounds like another word, right? And you shouldn't do that one either. But we do this to ourselves all the time, right? I should do this. I should do that. Mark and I were just talking about doing a TEDx. And I'm like, and he says, have you done one? I'm like, and there was a part of me, well, I should do that. Why haven't I done that? I should have done that. Well, I had other reasons I didn't do it, and I don't have any guilt over it. But the thing is, that thought was in my head. Those words were in my head where for a second I did should on myself. And I'm like, I'm a good entrepreneur. I'm a good storyteller. I'm a good speaker. Why haven't I done something like that would get me more notoriety, that would get me more publicity, that would get me, I got a TEDx talk. Wow. I did a TED talk. People look at you different. It's like when I published my book, people looked at me different. Wow, you have a book. You have an Amazon bestseller. Okay. The truth is, Amazon bestseller you buy. You don't have to, you don't have to do hardly anything to become an Amazon bestseller. I'm going to spoil that thing. So if you're looking at something and it's like, oh, they got an Amazon bestseller, all you have to do is be a bestseller for 1 hour. That can be at 2:00 in the morning. Yeah. But I tell you, those words mean something to people. Now, I know that it took 15 people at 2:00 in the morning to get me to be an Amazon bestseller. I got the title. Yay. But what that title means to the world, or at least people don't know that fact, is that, oh, that must be a good book. And they step me up in their esteem because I wrote a book. It's an Amazon bestseller. Woohoo. Now, if it became a New York Times bestseller, now that would be freaking amazing. Now, then I would be strutting my stuff. I'd be like, wow, I'm proud, right? In entrepreneurship, there's a lot of ways that we boost our credibility by doing stuff like this. And sometimes it's fake. I saw a coach one time who, what they did was they went to New York City. You paid for this, and you talked at some very auspicious places, aka Lincoln Center. I don't remember all the places, but you get the idea. And they even got their picture up in lights in Times Square. How cool is that, right? Now, the truth is, All this was paid advertising. But the people in Times Square, if they were looking, there's some of you been to Times Square. Oh my gosh, there's so much to look at. It's unbelievable. We went there at night, and it's like 10 o'clock at night. It's like noon. There's so many lights there. It's like broad daylight. But, the people walking down the street like, oh, wow. Da-da-da. Now, maybe New Yorkers, they see celebrities all the, people say in LA you see celebrities all the time. I don't. But they don't always look the same either. I've seen a few, but I don't really live in LA, that makes a difference. So maybe in New York, when you're walking past Times Square all the time and you see different faces there, maybe it's blasé. I don't know. But to say I had my face in Times Square, wow, that's an accomplishment. Now, some of these people are really accomplished, and some of these people are, and I'm not saying the people that took this class, they were, this was a pretty pricey class. You had to be somewhere to afford it. And this is how we gain credibility sometimes. When I've been in a lot of classes, and one of the things they talk about in marketing is, what's your credibility? How can we make it, we've all had to write resumes. How do you make your resume look good? Let's see, I'm 18, I'm 22, I'm just out of school, I'm looking for my first job. How do I make what I've done, which is practically nothing, look like something and make it real? And we've all extrapolated a little bit. Let's see, I did this thing for my church where we gave food to the poor. Okay, cool. I'm a big advocate for helping out the homeless, and I volunteer at food shelter, and you can make that sound much bigger than I did this for 4 hours one day, right? So the media does this as well, and they're looking for ways to get you fired up. And it's bothered me for a long time now how much we're using the word Hitler. Started, to my best recollection, during Obama. Suddenly everything was Hitler this, Hitler that, Hitler this. And I really find it offensive. I don't care if you're talking about it for Obama or Trump or anybody else for that matter. What Hitler did was truly terrible, on a scale that we have not seen in the last 100 years. And I think that comparing others to that is lessening. It's diminishing what he did. It's aggrandizing. So there's a lot of stuff he did that was not good. There's no question about that. And there's been a lot of stuff in politics that is not good. But I remember hearing Obama being called Hitler, and then it's Trump, and there's a lot of stuff in that which we're not going to get into, because this is how the media plays with us, right? Let's make this normal, right? And we're also at a place in history where there's a lot of people who didn't even study Hitler. All they know is like a couple paragraphs they read in a history book, if they read it and paid attention in school, which a lot of people hate history. So they didn't. They just like, oh no, Hitler's a bad guy. There's a lot of bad guys out there. Hitler was a terrible guy. Let's not equate bad with terrible. I don't care who we're talking about. Let's not equate bad with terrible. There is a desensitization that is happening here that I find very disturbing. Okay, so let me read what I read this morning, and this lady was so right on. I just want to bear with me while I read this. Offense does not equal hate. offense is a personal reaction. It says something about you and how you feel. Years ago, a little sidetrack, years ago, I was at work and my boss and her friend were talking and they were making fun of retarded people. This is 1995, around there. And they were doing the retarded. Now, I have a sister who's, I don't like to call her retarded, but she is not a full brain capacity. She's very capable, but she's not a full brain capacity. And I never saw her as retarded. And, they were doing they're retarded. And they were saying this from ignorance. It was very clear to me that they had never met somebody who was actually retarded. They had never had any interaction with somebody who was actually retarded. Because if they had, they wouldn't have said those things. They wouldn't have done those things. Because if you actually know somebody who is retarded, who is special needs, those people fight harder than anybody else. They have more courage than most of us do in our entire lifetimes. They don't give up on a plane that we don't ever have to face as quote unquote normal people. And they have more joy in them, especially the kids. They have more joy in them than most normal people. Because they celebrate every success. If that success is putting on a sock, they celebrate that success. What do? We put on socks, we get dressed, we don't think nothing about it, right? Daily things. There's how many daily things do you don't think anything about, you take for granted. But if it took you half an hour to read a paragraph, you'd celebrate that, wouldn't you? And they do. Now, I could have very easily sat there and gotten really offended and thrown a brick at them and verbally and screamed at them and said, how dare you say something so crude? And no, it didn't do that. Why? Because I knew what they were talking about was from ignorance. They turned the conversation to me and they asked me a question about the subject. And that's when I just said, you know what? My sister's special needs and she works very hard to do XYZ, and I don't agree with what you've said. Didn't have to get angry, didn't have to spew venom at them. I just said, this is my experience of what that looks like. And my experience is very different from hers. My normal is having a special needs sister. That's my normal. I have a friend who we do healing trades together. And she's got lots of brothers and sisters. And she said to me one day, I can't imagine having a sister with special needs like yours. And I said, I can't imagine what it's like to have a sister who's normal. I do have a quote unquote normal sister, but she's 11 years younger than me. So really, we kind of grew up in different families. There's the age gap that, her world was very different than my world. I grew up with my sister going in and out of the hospital, and there was all kinds of stuff going on. She didn't know that Teresa. She didn't know that She didn't know that version of Teresa. All she knew was Teresa when she got to a place. By the time she was around and she was conscious of really who Teresa was, all she knew was Teresa couldn't really read and write very well, and Teresa had some limitations. She wasn't there for the struggle. She wasn't there for the mystery. She wasn't there for all the in and out doctor appointments. That wasn't her reality. She knew a very different family growing up than the family I grew up in. And she's got some other issues too, which we won't get into. But Her reality growing up was so different than Teresa and mine. Totally different. Because all the turmoil, all the questions got solved. But now we're same family, but totally different realities, 11 years apart. The world was different. Our parents were different. I mean, we had the same parents, but who my parents were, with having a child that's a medical mystery and me, versus having having two kids who, pretty capable. Teresa was stable at that point, and the baby is so different. I mean, can you imagine? My mom is taking care of both of us, and she's struggling to do that. Well, with an 11-year-old and a 10-year-old around to help, my mom had a lot of help with that baby. So, I don't, her reality was just so different than mine. Anyway, so these people that I worked with, and I knew that they just didn't know. They just didn't know. They didn't have the experience that I had. They didn't know what was, they didn't have that experience. And when I said my version of it, they just both kind of shut up and went, "Oh, they didn't know." And they got really sheepish and they apologized. It didn't have to be World War III. It just was, let's talk about this. Okay, you have a different experience. Let's talk about this. You look on social media the last few days, it's a freaking war. People are saying things that they don't really know what they're talking about, some of them. They're misquotes. Half a quote being used. Oh, this justifies what I said. You're not using the whole quote. These friends, this boss and her friend, all they saw, this in the 90s, so you didn't see a lot of people on television who were handicapped. You didn't see a lot of retarded people on television. What they saw was, that's what was on TV. That's what they knew. That's what was in their world experience. Did that make them bad people? No. Did that make them hateful people? No. What it made them was ignorant, because they hadn't had the same experience I did. And when we talked about it, and they got to see my thing, their world changed. And this is what we need to do as a society. We need to talk to each other. Just because you're offended by somebody doesn't mean you need to create World War III on them. Let's talk to each other and find out what's your experience. All right, I'm going to read this again. Offense does not equal hate. Offense is a personal reaction. It says something about you and how you felt. But it does not define the internal condition of someone else's heart. It does not automatically mean they are hateful. We've allowed society to blur this line, treating personal discomfort as evidence of someone else's hatred. And what's worse is that it's been taken even further. First, words that offend were rebranded as hate, and then redefined as violence. When you blur this crap together, you justify silencing voices you don't like under the banner of stopping hate. Words can sting, words can challenge, words can shake us up, but words spoken in the realm of ideas, debate, and persuasion are not the same thing as harboring hatred towards another human being. And very clearly and obviously not the same thing as actual violence towards another human being. This distinction matters because the moment we decide offensive equals hateful or violent, we've handed power to whoever feels offended to declare what's allowed and what's not. That's not freedom. That's tyranny dressed up as safety or moral justice. If speech equals violence, then actual violence becomes justified self-defense and even thought of as necessary. If a statement you disagree with is framed as a violent attack, then pulling a trigger becomes an act of protection, an act of moral responsibility. That's the death of free society. The slippery slope has been intentional. Offense, I don't like what you said. Hate, what you said is hate. Violence, what you said is violence. Once you get there, any punishment up to and including assassination can be excused as justice and celebrated as getting the bad guys and doing what's right to protect us and necessary. You don't realize what a dangerous slope that is until that thought process is used against you. I'm going to continue reading her thing here because it's important. And P.S., I'm not talking about Charlie Kirk. I don't know a freaking man. I'm not in the business of vouching for politicians or public figures I know very little about, and I've never even met. My point is, regardless of what you think about him, there's a lot of people who didn't agree with him. Nobody said he has to agree with him. He didn't force anybody to agree with him. You don't have to agree with him, but wanting to kill somebody because they don't agree with you, or being joyful that killing somebody because they don't agree with you, takes us down a very slippery slope of society that is, quite frankly, incredibly dangerous. By today's standards, what my boss and her friend did was hate speech. It was violent attack by today's standards. In 1995, it was not. Should people go around making fun of people who are handicapped? No. Do people who don't understand, who don't know what's going on, who've not had that experience, are going, human nature is we make fun of what we do not understand. That is human nature. Human nature, unfortunately, it sucks. Humans by nature find cliques, religions, politics, hobbies, work things where they can feel like they are assimilated. They feel part of the crowd. There's a few people that don't need that. There's a few people out there that are fine being by themselves. And I have to tell you, sometimes it's a really beautiful thing. One of the things I've learned is a wardrobing technique. And the lady who taught it to us, she would do season seminars. And I loved going to the autumn seminar. I loved it. First of all, she had shopping there. Everything was, turn this off. I just wanted to read you that. Everything that was for sale was autumn. The activities we were doing were autumn based. Everybody there was autumn. Now, you may have a church that you go to, you believe in the same thing, in the same kind of community. You may have a hobby that you do and you feel that same kind of community. Let me tell you, spending a day with a bunch of autumns was one of the most amazing community-minded things I've ever done in my life. Ever. Being around people with the same energy as me was like miraculous. It felt like there's things that I could say that I wouldn't say normally. Autumns are very direct, so we would be the topic. What do you think? Well, okay. Now, typically, if you're with a friend, okay, what do you think? But there's a lot of even friends who wouldn't tell you what they really think. They might, sugarcoat it a little bit. They might do this. They might do that. But being able to go up to anybody else there and know that they're going to be honest with me. Wow. To have us all working at the same speed of energy. This goes beyond religion. This goes beyond politics. This goes beyond anything you can imagine. That all of our energy was running at the same speed. It was absolutely incredible, and I look forward to it all year. It was one of the most joyful things. This has nothing to do with color. This has nothing to do with politics or religion or any other thing you want to put a box on somebody. We had everybody there, all creeds, all colors, all everything, right? But we all had the same energy level. It was amazing. And as much as I looked forward to that event every year, and yeah, I was kind of sad when it ended because it was a level of connection that I didn't get anywhere else. And it's impossible to get anywhere else. I have dear friends who are not my season. And the thing is, there's 4 seasons. There's 4 different personality types. And you know what? The world needs all 4. It truly needs all 4. There's things I'm not good at that the other seasons are better at doing. And as much as I enjoy that day, I couldn't handle my whole world being like that all the time. Although, boy, would I get a lot done. Oh, man. I'm helping a friend who's in autumn clean stuff out right now. Clean up her house and do some organizing with her. And she was telling me, she told a friend, oh, Jeanette, Jeanette's helping me. And she tells her friend, and she's an autumn. And she's an autumn, which I'm not. But anyway, she says, I try to put, now she's what we call a spratum. So she's got a lot of spring energy, but she's an autumn. She's got a lot of both. I'm an autumn. I'm more autumn, but I got some spring. Being an entrepreneur, you got to get in touch with your spring somewhat. So anyway, she tries to procrastinate or do something to distract and fun. And there's been a few times I'm like, you don't really need that. What are we doing with that? Let's do this. Let's do this. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just doing what I've been brought there to do, is let's fix this, right? So she tells me, she says, yeah, I try to distract her and she gives me this look. And she says, she's scary. I know she said this tongue in cheek, but she also knows autumn to autumn, she's not going to get away with it either, right? She wanted to in the middle of our day, the other day, she wanted to stop and eat watermelon. And I said, no, that's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to eat watermelon. You can eat watermelon when I'm gone. We're not doing that right now. But and her friend, who understands all this, says, but you're getting stuff done, aren't you? And she goes, yeah, I am. And she beamed because she knows how much work we're doing and she couldn't do it any other way. So while this particular day is, being around autumns all the time is amazing, I know that I need my other season friends. I know that I need their presence in my life. I know that I need their presence in this world. And that's what we need to get back to in society. We've got to this place where, I don't care which side of the fence you're on, I've heard it both ways. I've heard both sides say it. The other side doesn't deserve to live. People are rejoicing that a man is dead. He did hateful things. He invoked violence. Why? Because he said something you didn't agree with? Is that invoking violence? This lady and her friend, were they invoking violence on me? I've been talked down to. I've been told horrible things about me. See, our words do mean a lot. And, we all grew up with sticks and stones might break my bones, but words may never hurt me. You know what? Words do hurt. They do. People spend a lot of time in therapy over words that were said. And if you've been a lot of time in therapy and you've done a lot of work on yourself, you know that a lot of times these words were not said with the intent even necessarily to harm you. Our parents did the best they knew how, right? There's no guidebook. Some of the guidebooks were crap. How many of us were brought up on Dr. Spock? Ugh. That should have been thrown away a long time ago. I think it has. I don't think Dr. Spock's a big thing anymore. But there was a whole generation of us that were brought up on Dr. Spock. We had some very uncaring attitudes, frankly. Were those acts of violence? Nowadays, parents don't let their kids cry themselves to sleep. That's the last thing they tell you to do. It's neglect now. I think we do need to be sensitive to others. I think we can also be hypersensitive to others. My boss and her friend could have been very offended. What they said was offensive. There's no question what they said was offensive. 100% was it offensive. Was it hate speech? Truly, was it hate speech? Do they hate people who are retarded? No. Was it an act of violence? No. It's an act of ignorance. I've seen a lot of people in this Charlie Kirk thing talking about he believed that women should be submissive. Now, let's just take Charlie out of it. First of all, this is something that comes from religion, right? So this isn't about Charlie, it's religion. And furthermore, his wife was getting a PhD. She had her own clothing line. Woman was a bright, enterprising lady. Let's talk about what submissive means, because I've seen a lot of misinformation about this. And I've seen this is what's really been happening. So I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I've gone to a lot of networking meetings, and I've gone to a lot of different marketing meetings. And let's see, this is about 20 years ago. There was this whole I'm a goddess coach thing that came along. Everybody was suddenly a goddess coach. What does being a goddess coach mean? What it meant was getting in touch with our femininity. As women, we've lost our femininity. And being submissive does not mean that we're just little slaves doing whatever you say without question. First of all, a good husband doesn't do that. A good husband is always looking out for the wife. Years ago, I had a friend who got married, and they had 2 weddings because she's Catholic. And so they need to get the sacrament of marriage, wedding, and then they had the wedding where they at the venue that they wanted. And we're at the church wedding. And the priest said something I'll never forget. And he said, today we celebrate the sacrament of marriage. And they went through some process. The priest had talked to them and stuff. And he said, but the truth is, I can perform the sacrament of marriage, but I can't give you the sacrament of marriage. It's something that the 2 of you have to give each other. And it's not something you give each other once. It's something you give each other every day. And what the sacrament of marriage is there's a triangle. There's you, there's me, and there's us. Now, some people also say that's God. Some people will say that's God. And what it means is that whatever you and me does is good for us. And people who are more religious say, okay, is in God's glory, is in what's going to please God. And what pleases God is we're good to each other. So however you want to, the sacrament of marriage says us. Each of these two things is going for the glory of what's better for the unit. That doesn't mean both people disappear in this triangle. My ex loved to sing. It filled his soul in a way that nothing else could. And we had a couple of years where he didn't sing. He got so dull and lifeless, and like, you need to go sing, go find some place to sing. This was such an integral part of his being. It's like me not being able to decorate, me not being able to design and be creative. This was food for his soul on a level that he was starving without it. Him singing was good for the triangle because it filled his cup. And he can't, and it doesn't matter, if one person's cup is empty, they can't help the other person. The idea is that both people fill their cup. Then that creates a space where you can take care of children, where the us becomes strong. He needed to sing. Now, him singing 3 days a week was too much. So there's balance, right? I need to create. This is such an incredible part of my soul. But if I'm working 16-hour days and he comes home and I'm still working till 10, 11 o'clock every night, that's bad for us. You know, being submissive as a woman, there's all these goddess coaches. There's been a lot of femininity coaches and masculinity coaches, the divine feminine, divine masculine. They take this out of politics, out of religion, out of everything, and they talk about the same thing. Women are geared differently than men. We just are. Our superpower is different than men. Men go hunting, right? I talked to a guy yesterday who he did a lot of sales, and he says he has his hunting days. I'm going hunting, whoa, right? And it's okay for them to have that moment because they kind of need that. Just the way we need to be told we're beautiful. Just the way we need to be able to look in the mirror and feel beautiful, no matter what. You know? And it's not about being vain. We walk different when we feel beautiful. And that's not about what's on the outside. Did you have Botox? Did you have hair done? You have your nails 10 feet long? All that stuff, that's on the outside. Feeling beautiful is on the inside. And we walk different when we feel beautiful. And we talk different when we feel beautiful. And we live different when we feel beautiful. When we see the good things that are inside of us. When we stop shooting on ourselves. And we take into what is our best qualities. In this triangle, each person sees each other's best qualities. And you take turns with them. It becomes like two cogs in a wheel. One person's not good at laundry, the other one steps in. One person hates taking out the trash, the other steps in. One person likes doing dishes, that's their job. One person likes doing laundry. One person's better at discipline. One person's better at dealing with tax problems. One person's better at going to the grocery store. One person's better at dealing with this family member. One person's better at deciphering about doing math. One person's better about doing writing. When we start looking at a relationship as cogs, and we build on each other's strengths and we fill in each other's weaknesses, that's when you get this triangle. And that's what we're not doing as a society. This right-left thing has become insane. And you know what? If one of them were to go away, it wouldn't be good. There's a lot of people who think, oh, we should all think the same. No, we shouldn't. Because it is in our differences, different ways of thinking. I have friends on both sides of the fence, and we talk. And I said, tell me why you think this way. And you know what? Guess what? They have different life experiences that fit that. What a concept. Just like my boss and her friend had a different life experience that they didn't have knowledge over something. Did that make them bad people? No. I don't care if you hate all Republicans or you hate all Democrats. They're not all bad people. They're not. They're not violent or hateful or all racist. What a concept. You know what somebody said to me today? I went to a Catholic school, so therefore I must be racist. And their reasoning was that some cardinal who died before I even thought about going to this high school was a racist. So therefore I must be a racist. Well, if you're going to extend our sphere of influence that far, I bet you we're all racist. This kind of thinking is so detrimental. So let's talk to each other. Let's find out, why do you think that? Instead of just, that's hate language. That's violent. You just attacked me. Why do you think that? Let me step in your shoes for a minute. See where you come from. Those of you who've been watching for a while, you know that my father died when I was a year old. And maybe that's why some of this Charlie Kirk stuff has hit me hard. Because I know how much work I've had to do because of that death. The doctor at the time even said that's the worst age that she could have lost him. And you know what? My heart bleeds for that little boy. I don't know this little boy. I don't know a lot about the situation. I don't know if he's got grandfathers or uncles or somebody that's going to step in and help. I have no idea. But that's my situation, my life experience saying, I know based on my life experience what this little boy, I don't know if it's a boy or girl, I don't know, this little 1-year-old has got to face, because I know what my challenge has been. Now, his world is not exactly like my world, and he may not have the same things that I had to overcome, and maybe he won't have, or I keep saying he, I think it's a boy. I think somebody said it was a boy. I could be wrong on that one. I know. Now, he may have somebody that can step in and is going to take that space and do it valiantly. I don't know. Maybe he won't have to overcome some of the stuff I've overcome. I hope for his sake he doesn't. But because I have that unique experience that is similar, when I heard the news, my heart broke for that little kid. Broken. Hey, Mark.
Yeah, very sad. It's actually a boy and a girl. I forget which is one, but one is one and the other is three. So it's a boy and a girl. So it's a 1 and a 3-year-old. Then I can't remember whether the boy is the 1-year-old or the girl is the 1-year-old. But I do know that it is a.
I know there's a boy and girl. I just don't remember which one's which. I think the little. Yes, I think the year-old is a boy. I think.
You may be right.
But anyway, so I want us to really look at our language and stop just making these violent attacks, accusing people of violence when it's not violent, accusing people of hate. There's no hate. Saying I'm racist because I went to Catholic school. There were people of color in my Catholic school. There's a lot of people of color in Catholic schools. A lot. Are they all racist? Because some cardinal was racist. Like, he died in 1979, for crying out loud. Like, really, we're going to judge somebody in 2025 because of something? The guy died in 1979. So I don't know if he was cardinal when he died, but
Yeah, like you said, there's a mixture in all groups, Catholics and Christians, and definitely Protestants, even Hindus and Buddhists. There's mixtures of people in all backgrounds, and yeah, we actually need to listen and be careful with the words we say, and all along those lines. So I definitely can agree with you on that. And as I've said on this show several times, even though I was not raised Catholic, actually wasn't raised overly religious at all, even though my mom's side of the family is very much Baptist. Matter of fact, I think the church, Pine Chapel, have a family time church and everything like that. And there's even some other churches on dad's side that we have ties to. I think some of them might be Methodist or all along those lines. But yeah, I went to a Jesuit university. Marquette is definitely Jesuit. And I think I said on this show that I had two professors that were on the opposite end of the spectrum, because one of the professors was very liberal, might have even practiced what some people call liberation theology, which is a notion that you can be making change and even making progressive change and radical political change while being religious, and that's what liberation theology is. But then I had another one that was ultra conservative and was a big fan of C.S. Lewis, who did the Screwtape Letters and all along those lines. So I definitely had people that were professors that were on the opposite ends of the spectrum and all along those lines. And all I know is that I was trying to get an A in both of those courses. So I think I might have got a B in one of them and maybe a B in both of them, but I was just trying to see what I could do to get decent grades, not really paying that much attention to their philosophies, whether I agreed with them or not. And there was one that I might have agreed with more than the other, since I consider myself more liberal to moderate, but that's neither here nor there and everything like that. But yeah, we definitely have to be careful with those words.
There's Lord of the Flies. This is what has come to my, Lord of the Flies. For those of you who haven't read it, there's these boys like 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. They were sent to, in World War II, England, a lot of children were sent out of the city of London to safety because they were being bombed. And these kids got lost. They landed on this island and there was no adults around. And there was this one kid who was fat and he couldn't do as much stuff as some of the other kids. They started picking on him and eventually they killed him. And it was mob rule. All the other kids were cheering and his death. And I don't think what's the noise, Mark? And there are people that in my life who've done some heinous things to me. I will not shed a tear when they die, but I'm also not going to be.
Yep.
And that's not okay. Mark, dancing on somebody's grave, that's not okay. So let's all look deeper. Let's ask more questions, because how long
Thank you coming. Okay.
Gotcha.
I'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
Okay, bye.
I don't know what's going on. Hey, Mark, was I on or was I not on? Mark can't hear me. Mark, don't you love live? And tech issues. Technology is so wonderful when it works, and when it doesn't work, it's just not. Mark is muted, and I think he's busy. It sounded like he had some phone calls coming in or something going on. Maybe there's a new podcast coming on after me that he needs to give attention to. So anyway, guys, be good to one each other. How hard is that? Be good to each other. All right. Well, I guess we have some dead airspace. So, what can we say? No. We might be interrupted any minute. He's frozen. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. He's never been frozen before. Usually he's there or he's not there. He's never been frozen. Well, we're back. I don't know for how long. It's time for some Kendu spice. There's nothing controversial about that. You need Kendu spice. They have wonderful, wonderful ingredients. You're going to feel better. It tastes great. It makes it easy to get all those wonderful vitamins in. And, it's got ashwagandha, which helps you to keep calm, helps deal with stress, and so many other things. So, yeah. Let's
It sounds like you're talking about that wonderful Kendu spice, which means it must be time for us to get to Kendu spice. And all along those lines, my job was trying to see whether I was coming in. I was like, today's the day off. I wasn't planning on it, so they said I didn't have to come in. So that's always a good thing. And all along those lines, but definitely, I think it sounds like you were talking about those lovely Kendu spices.
Let's go.
Let's go.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Kendu Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Kendu Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line after him. I have always looked to natural remedies to supplement the body, and I found myself hiding herbs and minerals in foods for my family. That's when it hit me. Everyone needs Kendu Spice. Everyone should be having this. It's an exclusive brand for cooks at any level who want to create flavorful dishes with healing benefits that can satisfy the body and soul. Add a little spice to your life. Give Kendu Spice a try.